Hi, I'm Jerry Michalek, and what I have here is the Mossberg JM Tactical Class Pro Series shotgun. So what I'm going to do for you next is give you an idea how to disassemble and also to put the proper maintenance on your 930 shotgun to keep it factory fresh. So let's go ahead and start on the disassembly. One thing that's absolutely critical, guys, is there's no ammunition present and absolutely have to have an empty firearm. So what we're going to do, we have a chamber flag here, which means there's nothing in the chamber, nothing possible to be in the chamber. But we also want to check the magazine to make sure there's no ammunition in the magazine. So we have an empty chamber, we have an empty magazine. So we're going to leave the chamber flag out. We're going to go ahead and take a bench block, just set it under the receiver. If you don't have a bench block, anything will work. I have a set of punches here, so I'm going to grab the proper punch for the application. What I'm going to do here is drive the two retaining pins out of the trigger housing. It doesn't take but a small tap and they'll start to move. So that one's gone, and the second one followed easily. So we've got that taken care of. We got the two pins out of the trigger housing. Take the bench blocks out of the way. What I want to do here when I do this disassembly on the trigger housing itself, I like to keep it pointing this way, face up. You notice that the receiver, the charging handle is up. That's how I want to keep the trigger housing. The reason for that is these pins that assemble the trigger housing, if you flip it over, they'll have a tendency to fall out. So anytime I'm servicing the 930, I try to keep the trigger housing in this orientation. It just makes it a little bit easier to keep track of the parts, less to fumble, less to lose. So I leave it in this position. So we're going to continue on and take the barrel clamp on. I've got the proper Allen wrench here to loosen the barrel clamp. Just going to reach up here and loosen it a little bit. The barrel clamp doesn't have to be wicked tight, guys. It just needs to stay in position. So I've got it loosened up. Going to take it off the end of the shotgun here. And maybe I should loosen it up a little bit more. Okay. There we go. The barrel clamp is off. So the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the magazine extension. What you want to remember when you start to remove this extension, there's a lot of spring pressure there. You want to have some kind of eye protection on, and you also want to keep it away from you somewhat. So I'm going to spin it off a little bit here. And be careful when it gets almost to the completely removed position there, not to have the spring pop out on you all at once. So there we have it. There's the magazine extension. The spring assembly is out. Get it on the table here. Also, the forearm. What I'm going to do is hold the barrel in position and push the forearm forward off the retainer clip. Take the forearm off. So we have that off. Now we have the bolt. I'm going to go ahead and hold it to the rear a little bit, get it out of the lock in the barrel extension so it's not locked into the barrel extension. I'm going to reach up here, and this is the piston assembly that rides in the barrel extension. So I'm going to hold this, pull it forward while I'm pulling back on the rearward on the receiver, and just rock it a little bit back and forth. I'm trying to pull this piston out with the barrel assembly, and here it goes. I'm just going to lay it on the table the way it comes out. The spacer tube, the pusher assembly, the return spring, and then the handguard retainer clip. So there's the assemblies basically. Now I'm going to remove the bolt assembly from the 930. So what I'm going to do is take the receiver, keeping the ejection port facing up again, just like the trigger housing. I'm just going to push back a little bit with my finger on the bolt assembly, grab the charging handle, and just pull it out. Comes straight out. You notice the charging handle has a little notch in it. It goes to the rear, so it'll only go back one way, guys, so you can't screw it up. So the bolt assembly now is ready to be removed from the receiver. So as we pull it out of the receiver, you want to be careful not to drop it. It's going to be in three basic pieces. You have your bolt, you have your slide, and you have your link pin. The only thing you can lose here, guys, is a small pin that holds the link pin to the slide, and it will fall out if you hold it sideways. I'm going to go ahead and push it out of there. This one's... So you have your slide and your link pin and your bolt assembly and the retaining pin for the link. So there you have it. That's the basic assemblies. talk a little bit about how to prepare these parts to be put back into the gun in a clean state. Got a couple of shop rags here. Go ahead and take the bolt assembly and just make sure that it's relatively clean. What I'm looking for when I'm working on a bolt assembly, I want to make sure that the extractor is good and loose. And I'm also looking at the condition of the firing pin. So with a punch like this, I'm able to push it to the front. And what I'm looking for is that the firing pin is traveling relatively free through its whole cycle. And it is, so that's a good deal. So that's the bolt assembly. It's pretty much clean and ready to go. The slide assembly, anytime you see any kind of debris on it, of course you want to police that up and clean it the best you can. If you have a sonic cleaner, guys, that's a blessing. You can just throw all these parts in there for about a half hour and they come out pretty spotless too. The trigger assembly is the same way. What I try to do on a trigger assembly like this, when I do maintenance on it, is to go ahead and retain the hammer with my thumb and open it up to this position, bring it outside, and with some parts cleaner, usually what I try to use is something like this Hornady. It's a spray cleaner and a lubricant. You can go out and blast all the crud out of it. What you want to be careful with your trigger assembly is that you don't turn it over. Also, if you turn it over with the hammer in this position, the spring retainer here that holds the firing pin, the hammer spring will fall out. So you have to be careful when you work on this not to turn it in the wrong direction, or pieces and parts will fall out. So anyway, that's the trigger assembly. The slide assembly and the link pin, all that's good shape. The one thing you really want to pay attention to on a gas gun is the gas system itself. This gas piston, guys, is the heart and soul of what makes this shotgun function. So we're going to go ahead and do a detailed clean on this gas piston. So I'm going to move these parts out of the way somewhat, and we'll do a close-up of the disassembly on the piston. Okay, what I have right here is the gas piston. This is the heart and soul of a Mossberg 930 shotgun. So if you're going to do any maintenance procedure correctly, this is the one part you really want to pay attention to. It's actually 3 pieces. There's 2 gas rings and there's the piston itself. So I'm going to show you a disassembly technique that I use. I use a little screwdriver to pry the rings off, and what you want to be very careful of is not to have anything in front of this screwdriver tip. Should it slip, you don't want to cut yourself or impale your finger. So you notice my finger is going to be way behind the end of the screwdriver. You notice the split here on the outer ring. What I'm going to do is just address the screwdriver to that ring and just pry it back a little bit, and then turn the piston like this, and you see it peeling right off the top of the piston. So there you have the piston itself and the 2 rings. You can go ahead and push the inner ring out through the bottom like this. And you notice each ring has a tapered side to it, and these tapers always go to the up position on the piston. So what you want to be really paying attention to here is this inner fit right here, guys. This is where the carbon and the leading that will come out and actually cause stoppages on your shotgun. It has usually about a 400 rounds, or maybe more. It depends on the ammunition. Again, you want to really get in here and clean this surface area. This gun has been cleaned here recently, so it's not much in there, but this fit is what you really want to be paying attention to. You want it bright and clean all the way around, and also the inner ring. You also want to clean it on the inside to make sure when it goes into a seating position in the outer ring that it's going to fit properly. So these 2 rings have been cleaned. And what you want to realize on any piston ring, you see the splits in them. When you go to reassemble them, you want them to be 180 degrees apart from one another. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to push both tapered seats are up. I'm just going to put the outer ring over the inner ring and push it together. And that's how that goes. And to put it back on the piston, you basically just throw it on one side and push it around, and there you have it, guys. It's reassembled in the correct position and it's ready to play. A good way to tell if this part has been serviced correctly is to take your barrel assembly and put it in the cylinder to see if it reciprocates very easily. You can see this fit is nice and smooth. There's no drag whatsoever, so these parts are really clean and they're ready to play. They're ready to shoot another 500-600 rounds at least. So this is the heart and soul, guys. This is where you really want to pay attention when you're doing your maintenance. And I'll give you an idea of some proper tools to do this with in just a second. Okay, we're going to move on to the barrel assembly, do some proper maintenance there, give you some ideas on what tools that I use to do this job professionally. This gas cylinder, the piston of course reciprocates in the cylinder, so you want to keep this assembly clean on the inside. What happens if you do a lot of high speed shooting, the wadding seems to deposit more plastic in here than normal, so if you shoot fast like I do, this might need a little bit more maintenance. So I'll give you some idea. If this piston goes in easily and it seats all the way, it's pretty clean. And the way I keep it clean is a stainless steel brush assembly like this that's available for gas operated semi-automatic shotguns, and its job is to clean this cylinder. That's about the only tool you're going to find to do this properly. So I usually turn it counterclockwise. I've been doing that, kind of keep the brush in line, make it last a little bit longer. So what I'm looking for is the utmost bottom of this cylinder where that piston reciprocates, that it will bottom out and allow the bolt assembly to close all the way. So it's very important that this cylinder be clean. Also the chamber, guys. Semi-automatic shotguns are famous for chambers rusting. Guys shoot them, set them up, don't put the right maintenance on them. There again, I have a brush assembly made just for the shotgun chamber. It's something I want to take a lot of pride in and keep the chamber clean. These guns reciprocate very fast, so a clean chamber also facilitates speed, and you want to make sure that's one of your main goals, to have the chamber and the gas cylinder as clean as possible. So we've cleaned both of them. Another thing I do with the barrel assembly, I've got an old bore snake here. You can see it's pretty old. What I do is keep a rust preventative on it already. So after I've cleaned the barrel like this, should the bore be clean enough, I'll just drop the bore snake through it once or twice, just to make sure that I have enough rust preventative on it, so when I store it, it's not going to degrade and rust. So nothing like a well-trained bore snake. And that right there, guys, is what I'm looking for. It has enough rust preventative lubricant on that bore snake already that I know the chamber won't rust while I have it stored. So there you have it. Another thing I like to do when I clean this assembly, if I'm going to set the shotgun up for any period of time, I use something like this Hornady One Shot. It's a dry lubricant also. I don't like to put any oil in the gas system itself. This is a dry lubricant. Keeps it functional and also keeps it from rusting while it's in storage. So check the piston again. It's ready to go, guys. So that's what you want to feel when you disassemble your gun. This is going to be the spot if you have trouble. It's going to be right here. This part needs maintenance. It's just the way it is, guys. So every 500-600 rounds, depending on the ammunition, you got to get in here and clean this gas piston up. So, okay, so the barrel assembly's clean. You can take your receiver, and on your magazine extension, you can see the fouling here. If you like 3-gunner like I am, shotgun slugs are very notorious for making a lot of lead deposits on this assembly. So if you wanted to take a stainless steel brush like this and clean it with some solvent, you can do that. And if you're impatient like me, I'll just grab some steel wool, pretty coarse grade of steel wool, and get on there with the steel wool and just knock it off. What you want to be aware of, if you're going to use steel wool or something to clean this assembly, not to have the receiver pointing up, because the little pieces of steel wool and stuff will fall in the receiver. That's something you don't want to do. So if you're going to use something like steel wool, keep it pointed down. We didn't need that part anyway. And it really takes that fouling off of there really quick. So that's my interpretation of what I need to do there to keep the proper maintenance on this magazine extension. Okay, what you want to do on the inside of the receiver, you can take a shop rag or something and make sure you have all the ways clean. Usually what I'll do, I'll take a solvent like this carbon cutter here, spray the inside of the receiver, take a rag with a plastic probe like this, and go ahead and get it in all the cracks and crevices. Make sure there's no dirt or debris in there. Clean it as best I can, and then I go ahead and try to do a proper reassembly. So the receiver's clean, the barrel's clean, the bolt assembly is clean. So we're going to go ahead and do a reassembly for you, give you some idea. We'll take the slide and the link. You notice that the link itself has a little bit of a taper to it, and that always goes in the down position. So I'm going to put the slide and the link back together with the link pin. And what you want to be aware of on the link pin, The only thing that retains that link pin is the bolt assembly itself. So when you drop the bolt on, the link pin cannot fall out. So that's properly assembled. There again, when I go to reassemble, I'll just use a few drops of oil. What I'm trying to do here is to use a good synthetic grade oil. It seems to, especially over a period of time, it won't gum up like conventional oil. Just a few drops there and it's ready to go. Now, to drop the bolt assembly back into the receiver, you want to hold the receiver up like this, take the bolt assembly. Try to give you a side view here. You drop the bolt assembly in, you might have to wiggle it a little bit back and forth. And what you're trying to do with the link, you have to line it up with the return spring plunger here. And I see I've got it lined up. Now I'm going to hit the bolt release when everything is lined up, and it's going to drop right into the return plunger. And there it is, guys, lined right up. So now you take your bolt handle. This is going to keep this assembly from falling back out should you turn it in a position that it was to fall. Now it's assembled. So we have the bolt assembly in, we've got the charging handle. So usually what I do next is to go ahead and put the trigger group back in. You'll notice here on the trigger assembly that I've kept it in the upward position here so the pins do not fall out. That's the smart thing to do. So we're going to go ahead and put it back into the receiver. Align the retaining pins here with the trigger group. And with a soft-sided hammer, like this hammer here has a plastic face on it, you go ahead and tap them back to their flush, and then the trigger assembly is in its proper position. I'm going to reach up, charge it back to the rear position. I'm going to take the forearm retainer, put it on first, take the return spring, put it on next, and then the pusher assembly. Now the pusher assembly, show you something here else what to watch for. What I notice when my firearm is getting to the point of proper maintenance again is when you fire the last shot and the bolt is to the rearward position. If I can see this pusher assembly from inside the ejection port, that's telling me that this piston is fouled to the point to where it's not returning in its upward position. And I'll show you that in just a second. So we have the pusher assembly, we got the spacer tube. We'll go ahead and drop that in. I'm going to lay this down for a second, grab the barrel extension, the barrel assembly, put the piston back in, put it flush, go ahead and get it up again in the position. I'm going to push the pusher assembly into the receiver, put the two together right here, and try to get your fingers out of the way as best you can, and just rock it back, hold the bolt to the rear, lock it in, and now it's in its total lock position, it's ready to go. And you can see when it's in the position like this, when you actually fire around, of course it captures the gas here in the cylinder, pushes the piston to the rear, pushes the pusher, and that cycles the firearm. So pretty simple, pretty ingenious, very fast setup, by the way. So we've got this properly assembled. We're going to take the forearm and put it back on just to keep everything good and tidy. All right, it's all the way in. We have a magazine follower. I don't know how that got on the floor. I didn't do it. Okay, drop the magazine follower in the right position. So, there again, we've got to put the spring assembly back in with the magazine extension. There, guys, you want to have your safety glasses on. This thing is has a mind of its own. Capture it the best you can with your fingers. Put it on there. What I try to do on the magazine extension, guys, this is a two-piece assembly. So what I try to do, I'm holding this part and I'm going to lock the lock nut on first. And the reason for that is I want to seat the handguard, and then I'm going to seat the magazine tube. And that makes it go right into the extension under the handguard in the proper position. Tighten it down just a little bit. If you find yourself wanting here to tighten this or loosen it, you can use both hands. Usually in a position like this, I can captivate the stock with my feet, and I can grab it with both hands and twist it one way or the other, and you can put a lot of horsepower on this part. So got it locked in. go ahead and put the barrel clamp on while we're here. And this is something else. You don't have to smash it on there, guys. Just enough to keep it on there from recoil. That's all you need. Go ahead and lock it in there, as so. There it is. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put my chamber flag in there just because I like to see it when I'm working on a firearm. One thing that's overlooked on just about everybody's shotgun is the choke tube itself. Mossberg was smart enough to give you a choke tube wrench, so you want to make use of it. Every time I service this firearm, I always take the choke tube out to lube it. What happens, guys that shoot their shotguns for years and years and not change the tube, and guess what? When they go to change it, it's frozen in there and it's gonna never come out. So what I try to do every time I do this maintenance routine is pull the choke tube out, put a couple of drops of oil on it, and put it back home. That's gonna, in the long run, it means a lot to how easy you can remove it, if you can remove it at all. So very overlooked. You see a lot of good guns running with a rusted in choke tube. Something else you want to realize when you get it just about to the seated position, you don't have to put a lot of horsepower on it. Just put it in and just give it a little bit of torque, and that's all you need, guys. Anything more than that, you're just wasting time. So we're all the way assembled. Safety's back on. Nothing in the chamber here. Usually what I'll do when I have it in this position, I'll put a couple of drops on the ways, on the guides here inside the receiver. And other than that, you don't need a lot of oil on these guns to make them work good. So that's basic maintenance 101 on the 930 JM Mossberg shotgun. And there you have it, guys. That's the bolt assembly. Now what you want to be careful with when you have this what you want to be, I'm going to start that over.